Up next, Dakota State University President José-Marie Griffiths. In her relatively short time in South Dakota, she has energized DSU and gotten our state to think differently about technology. Not only technology, but how we will live as South Dakotans in the future, thanks to the spark that she has generated for technology in our state. And I know she's going to do that for us again today as she challenged us to become connected for life.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. I'd first like to thank the organizers for inviting me to present today. And I want to give a special thank you to AT&T, SDN, and the South Dakota Chamber for donating the proceeds of this meeting to DSU CyberHer. I know that's coming up later, but it would be wrong of me not to acknowledge that. And thank you very, very much ahead of time. For those of you who may not be familiar with us, DSU was founded in 1881. As a teachers' college for the Dakota territories. And today, Dakota State is a comprehensive state university, part of the South Dakota regental system. We've heard about several of the institutions today. We have undergraduate, master's, and doctoral programs through 4 colleges: arts and sciences, business and information systems, computer and cyber sciences, and education. And the reason that I'm here today is that DSU as a university has a special focus on the development, application, implications, and impact of computing, information technologies, and cybersecurity in all areas of human endeavor. So Dakota State is a leader, just have to check where I am, is a leader in the development and use of technology in education, research, and workforce and economic development. And I'd like to tell you about some of those pioneering efforts. And I'd also like to tell you about some of the critical information as to why we need to continue to energetically advocate for rural broadband and 5G for South Dakota and our regions. We're making progress, but a lot of people still don't understand, and we still have to educate them. And finally, I'm going to tell you a little bit about some of the things we're working on in collaboration with the state and other partners to move South Dakota to becoming a cyber state in the heartland. And it actually ties in with some of the comments we had earlier this morning. DSU is rising. If you haven't heard our tagline, that's our tagline. We've moved from being what I used to call the little university on the prairie to become the powerhouse of the plains. We've received multiple Center of Excellence designations in education research and regional resource development from the U.S. National Security Agency and the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. DSU is home to the Madison Cyber Labs, the Mad Labs, a cyber R&D hub. It's a very applied research and development activity driven by problems that we identify or people outside the university identify for us to work on. And we explore and advance technology application, workforce development, business development, economic growth, and policy improvement across multiple disciplines and fields. I'd like to begin by describing some scenarios of the ways we are using technology to transform education, healthcare, community development, and business, and why we need to continue to advocate for rural broadband and 5G. Okay. A classroom full of students eager to learn how to program secure software for mobile devices greet their professor as he rolls into the room. The professor is a quadriplegic who uses an electric wheelchair, and at this moment he's stranded at his home by a South Dakota snowstorm that his wheelchair can't get through. However, a plain snowstorm will not stop him from teaching his class. As students eagerly trek through the snow to their South Dakota State University class, the professor confidently makes his way to the front of the classroom via a tall robot named Cosmo, after the professor's favorite Seinfeld character. Miles away in his home office, the professor uses his computer to move the iPad positioned on the top of the robotic stand to see and warmly greet the students. He begins teaching, and the students intently listen, take notes, and periodically ask questions. The professor sees their raised hands through his computer screen at home and immediately responds. He moves the robot in closer to the student to clearly hear and understand the question, and then moves back to the front of the class so everyone can see and hear his answer. An hour later, 30 students walk out of the room, knowing how to program certain security features into their software, a skill desperately needed by businesses and organizations across the country. The professor heads out of the classroom with the students via his robot. A couple of students have additional questions, and with the professor, they head into the collaboration space so that they can talk further and get their questions answered, as well as talk about how to apply their new knowledge to some specific problems. Another application. A newly graduated respiratory therapist looks at the monitor next to the patient's bed, mentally scrambling to remember the textbook material she learnt and how to apply it to the patient before her who needs help. Her heart is beating fast, and she's struggling to stay calm for the patient's sake. A few miles away, a DSU respiratory therapy student studies the numbers coming up on the computer monitor, quickly reviewing and analyzing the data to choose a treatment protocol. Her instructor is sending multiple scenarios to the in rapid succession for the student to analyze and implement a treatment protocol on the technology-filled, simulated patient mannequin lying on the bed in front of her. In 1 hour, the student is confronted with more different cases than she would likely see in a week or more working full-time in a hospital. The student's confidence grows as she makes and corrects mistakes with the instructor's assistance. And by the end of the hour, she's well prepared to assist any patient experiencing the specific life-threatening condition that's the topic of this class session. She leaves the classroom excited about the career she's chosen and the knowledge that after graduation, she'll know how to do a good job the moment she walks into her first hospital position. The planes have always been an important piece of the breadbasket of the nation, but today, with international competition and increasingly challenging weather, those in the business of agriculture know they need to find additional new ways of farming. Enter technology. A shrimp farming engineer sits at his computer and brings up the morning report on the condition of the thousands of shrimp in hundreds of tanks located in this huge shrimp farm in a large building in the middle of a South Dakota field. He makes some adjustments to the temperature and water flow for some of the tanks, and then turns his attention to the morning updates from his supply chain, noting that shrimp farmers in other parts of the country are running low on one of the types and sizes of shrimps that his company farms. He immediately sends a message off to his staff to switch over 5 of their tanks to increase their production of those shrimp, knowing the price on them is rapidly rising with the shortage in other parts of the industry. High school students scramble off a bus and make their way into a small rural school. They've spent all the years of their education, kindergarten to now, their senior year in high school, in one small building. The closest students live 3 to 5 miles away, the farthest 15 to 20 or more. One of the students walks into her AP biology class. The teacher hands her a virtual reality headset for the day's lesson. The entire senior class in this very small rural high school has only 9 students. It's one of 50% of US schools, or more than 70% of South Dakota schools, located in a rural community. However, so far this year, these 9 students have visited the Great Hall at Ellis Island, walked on the moon, experienced trench warfare during World War I, and studied Van Gogh's sunflower paintings in a museum in Amsterdam, all from the comfort of their classroom. The student with the headset begins exploring a 3D virtual reality model of the heart through her headset, turning, expanding, and shrinking the beating object as she explores its various parts and sees how they function. When she's done, the teacher hands her the standardized test for the unit to complete. The student scores 100% and then has a conversation with the teacher about the student's newly sparked interest in becoming a cardiac surgeon. While these scenarios may seem very different, as you can understand, they all depend on reliable, robust, fast connectivity. The next thing I'd like to talk about is the importance of connectivity, especially for South Dakota. Recently, Senator Thune, our senior South Dakota senator, held a field hearing in Sioux Falls to talk about these issues, and I'd like to share with you some of the points that I raised at that hearing. Those of us who've been engaged over the years in the development of our present technology age have long been concerned about what has been called the digital divide. This is the phrase to describe the haves and have-nots when it comes to access to technology. And today it refers to those who have or do not have access to secure, reliable broadband connectivity. In the United States today, more than 60 million people can't access the indispensable parts of American life that have migrated online, like education, healthcare, business and financial opportunities, and employment. 20 and even 10 years ago, the digital divide primarily split on economics. Those who had money had access, those who did not were cut off. And while poverty still has an impact on access to connectivity, the real digital divide in the US is now between urban and rural areas. So what is needed for everyone to participate in this innovation information age? Areas across South Dakota that are experiencing the benefits of broadband connectivity, like Dakota State University and our host community Madison, Sioux Falls, and various other areas around South Dakota, are making sure that we have 4 components: reliable, fast, secure, adequate capacity broadband internet service, reliable, fast, secure, adequate capacity cell phone service, technology services at costs we can sustainably afford, and a highly skilled tech workforce. Digital isolation, for example, in some of those white areas of South Dakota, actually impacts the rest of the country. According to a 2016 study done by Deloitte for Facebook, every day that one person is not connected to the internet, America loses $2.30 of potential economic activity, which means that, well, that might not seem a lot, but it means that the rural-urban digital divide costs our country over $83 million a day in economic activity, or just over $28 billion a year. So if we could solve the rural-urban digital divide today, somehow we'd have the potential to add about $30 billion a year to the US economy. According to a comparative analysis of Bureau of Labor Statistics and data from the Deloitte Multinational Professional Services Network, students are 10% more likely to earn a high school diploma and college degree when connected to the internet at home, and will earn over $2 million more over their lifetimes. In a study published by the Carsey School of Public Policy at the University of New Hampshire, researchers discovered that 47% of rural districts have no secondary students enrolled in advanced placement courses. This 47% rural AP class void compares to urban districts where less than 3% have no students, and in the suburban areas, only 5% have no students in AP courses. And we have to understand these AP courses are available online, so anybody can access them if they have the connectivity. In education, we have the added issue of bandwidth and the number of simultaneous users. Not only do schools require reasonable internet speeds, they must also have enough bandwidth to accommodate large numbers of students online simultaneously. And about 41% of schools do not yet meet the FCC's short-term bandwidth goal of 100 megabits per second per 1,000 students, and thus are cut off from a vast number of educational resources. Those schools represent 47% of students in the United States, including more than 6 million high school students, almost exclusively in rural areas. And this is one reason why 5G development and implementation will be so important, since one of the improvements with 5G will be to accommodate more simultaneous users. According to the Education Superhighway's 2018 State of the States report, students who don't have access to the educational applications and content available in connected classrooms are at a significant disadvantage in trying to compete in today's world. The sad fact is that rural students without adequate connectivity don't even try for education beyond high school. And part of this is impacted by the fact that almost all colleges and universities' application process are now online. So if you're not online, you tend not to go and do that. Statistics show that students living in an urban area has a 10 to 15% higher chance of going to college than a comparably achieving student in a rural area. Now, thinking about connected communities versus digitally isolated communities have vastly different pictures of health. Communities where 60% of the households lack access to broadband, or over 60% lack basic internet connections at home, the obesity prevalence is 25% higher for the people with the lack of access, and diabetes prevalence is 35% higher. The divide between connected and non-connected population health is getting worse. In metropolitan and urban areas, 14 fewer people died from diabetes in 2018 than died in 1999, and in rural areas, only 0.35 fewer people died. People in rural areas on average have to pay 40% of their health costs compared to metropolitan urban dwellers who only have to pay about 33%. We know that telemedicine could potentially deliver more than $6 billion a year in healthcare savings to US companies, most especially in rural areas. 24 rural hospitals have implemented telemedicine and were able to increase annual funding by as much as $1.3 million a year. And from the FCC, electronic health records and remote monitoring technology create more than $700 billion in net savings over 15 to 25 years, plus, and what's perhaps even more important, better outcomes for the patients. The Center for Health Information Technology at Dakota State University is the first state in the country to have more than 85% of healthcare providers using electronic health records. An unemployed person who has the internet at home will be employed 7 weeks faster than one who does not, and that person will earn more than $5,000 in additional income annually. Community leaders can't attract new businesses or slow declining populations if they don't have fast internet connections. 19 million Americans have no access to broadband internet, and in those areas it's impossible to set up a company that requires connectivity, and today that's in almost every endeavor. We also see the potential for telework. We heard about that a little bit earlier. Telework becomes extremely difficult if you don't have good connectivity. We see shifting industry characteristics. Farming, logging, and mining typically have been very strong in the rural employment sector. They relied on human capital and has shifted more and more to automation, outsourcing, and foreign direct investment. And the evolution of agriculture and mining through the use of technology has left increasing numbers of rural inhabitants jobless. There's increased production per working person. In 1960, food demand provided jobs to close to 7 million people, but today, the increased US population need only 2 million farmers to feed the US, a loss of over 5 million rural jobs. Rural broadband often has only one provider. That means no competition and rate setting, and that makes it more expensive for some people. We heard again the number of IT professionals. We have too few IT professionals and unavailable training in rural areas, and unreliable, slow connectivity is an obstacle for the development of business. IT professionals are expensive, and those with tech skills need access to training and ongoing development, and that often limits digital adoption in rural areas. I know there's a lot of statistics there, but they are important, and each one on their own is sort of interesting, but they aggregate, and when you accumulate those across rural America, they are significant. So I'd like to talk just a little bit about the critical necessity of bringing ubiquitous rural broadband and 5G connectivity to South Dakota. Networking is connecting people and resources, and connections change the world. So I want to talk a little bit about what we're doing at Dakota State University, since we were mentioned this morning. And I know these slides are a little bit complicated, but if you look at them, we go from the bottom up. So at the bottom, in 1984, we were given the responsibility of being the computing campus of the public higher education system in South Dakota. So we have very, very deep foundations in computer science. In 2004, we built cybersecurity programs, but not just one. Our first one was information assurance in our business college. Now we've got actually 16 programs in various aspects of computer science and cybersecurity. 4 years ago, we only had 7. So we've been expanding our programs. Now we're looking at where do we go from here. And if you look at the cyber program extensions, you hear things you heard this morning. The importance of artificial intelligence, the importance of privacy engineering, that's very much in its infancy, but the more and more we connect to the internet, especially with personal devices and home devices, privacy is going to become an issue. Data science, we heard all about the data science and how extensive the needs are there. And then we're looking at the analytical side of sciences, particularly biosciences. So we have significantly increased our faculty in artificial intelligence, data science. We've been adding them in cybersecurity programs, and we're looking at that for the future. But the reason we're doing that is we see the opportunity to create what we call fusion programs. So the first one is cyber leadership and intelligence. These people take about a third of their program is world affairs, About a third of their program is human behavior, including aberrant human behavior, and about a third of the program is cybersecurity. So these people are not going to be the technical people actually fixing cybersecurity problems. They're going to be the intelligence analytical people identifying where organizations are vulnerable and helping them get in touch with the techies to sort of begin to provide protections. We are working with South Dakota State, looking at applying cybersecurity, artificial intelligence, and data science to precision agriculture. That's a much, much needed development. We do have a collaborative program in analytics with South Dakota State, was mentioned this morning. We are looking at artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, and healthcare, particularly as it relates to the delivery of healthcare to the individual in the home, as we see more people aging in place, more people with chronic conditions that need ongoing monitoring, etc. And then cyber law, a whole new area of law practice is going to emerge, particularly as we start looking at applications of artificial intelligence, those models that may be biased or not, that's going to come into play. So we're working directly with the USD Law School and coming forward with a program in cyber law. And we believe that artificial intelligence and cybersecurity can be applied to manufacturing, particularly as we move to agile manufacturing, and we believe that we'll be working with the School of Mines and South Dakota State University in that area. So lots of potential there. Just very quickly on the educational side, at the bottom layer we have all the traditional degrees. In the middle we have South Dakota Partnership for Student Success, which provides opportunities for people to get stackable credentials, which means they can take different pathways to get their academic credentials. They can move at their own pace, and the credentials they get, let's say for a certificate, will be completely movable into, let's say, an associate degree. An associate's degree can be completely movable into a bachelor's degree. And now what we're doing, we're doing some additional work with the education pipeline, the K through 12 schools. We've been working with high schools around the area in high school dual credit programs. This fall, we've just launched our Computer and Cyber Sciences Academy in the Sioux Falls School District, where high school students, juniors and seniors, will be able to take up to a full year of college credit while they're in high school in the areas of cybersecurity, software development, and network services. And then we have our CyberHer and other camps that we do every summer, which you'll see a little bit more about. We're about to create a new not-for-profit entity called SOAR. This is focused on non-credit and professional credentialing. So non-credit courses, they don't carry that academic credit, but we'll be able to be much more responsive to the demands of the workplace and short courses and offer them very quickly and responsively as the needs emerge. And we'll be able to provide some of that ourselves, or we'll be able to bring in providers to serve the community. And that's predominantly, to start off with, the East River communities, I guess. And then on the research and development side, somebody mentioned MAD Labs, the Madison Cyber Labs, opening on Wednesday next week. These are a series of research clusters, faculty working together across disciplines, a couple of institutes that are really engaged in education and awareness building and policy development, and a variety of collaborations with external entities, government and private sector. I'm very pleased to say our early collaborations that are already in place are with South Dakota-based entities, public and private. We are doing some work at the national level with the National Security Agency, and will expand, but we continue to want to work with entities in South Dakota. It makes it more meaningful. Now, the MAD Labs is a special, I'm going to just skip through this for a minute. It's a special kind of building. There are two parts to it. There's a sort of non-classified part to that building where a lot of the work goes on for the kinds of research you might want done, and a classified piece where you have to have a security clearance to perform classified work. What that means is, instead of our students in cybersecurity leaving for the coasts, because they are the only facilities where they can do that work, they will be able to do that work in Madison, South Dakota. And we have a plan to expand that. So we're working to help begin to make South Dakota a cyber state. So the first thing we have to do is position the state as a center of cyber expertise and development, expand the state's cyber companies and services, expand our cyber education resources, especially enhancing the K through 12 cyber education, and then creating cyber-related jobs. Our petitioning includes We're looking now at developing government funding for 180 Mad Labs new full-time classified R&D jobs in the community. This is the classified jobs. We anticipate we can have probably 75 to 100 additional jobs, non-classified, in Madison. We want to promote Cyber Mission Force for regional military. That's the Ellsworth Air Force Base, as they bring in the new bomber, and the Air Force and Army National Guard in Sioux Falls. We're also promoting the idea of a cyber mission there. Our long-term goal, and I don't mean 10, 20 years from now, probably 3, 5 years from now, we want to create 1,000 to 2,000 high-paying cybersecurity jobs in South Dakota, based heavily in Sioux Falls, with another group out in Rapid City supporting the mission at Ellsworth. And we expect to do that by working with government departments and agencies, recruiting government contractors, startup businesses, bringing in some more people or more employees from those established defense contractors, as well as large-scale IT companies. And our goal in the educational side is we plan to increase our cyber grads from 200 right now a year to 400 over the next 3 to 5 years. We want to improve K-12 adoption of immersive cybersecurity education and computer science education. We want to work with other universities across other public universities around the state, so we tend to bring our areas of expertise together rather than try and compete. And I've mentioned the new fusion programs. So I could show you a number of maps of various indicators of cyber strength across the United States, and there would be absolutely nothing in the middle of the country. So I've just gone to the end point. All those states in green have really no cyber presence, no major IT companies, no cybersecurity startups of any real number. And so we believe that there's an opportunity here for South Dakota, because of the presence of DSU and its national recognition in the area of cybersecurity. We have the opportunity to build on that, to reach out regionally. And the arrows point to states that we already, from NSA, have regional resource responsibility for. So we're working with universities and community colleges in those 9 states. And the National Security Agency is about to go from 8 regions, where we're one of the regions, to 3, and they want us to be one of the 3. So our range of activity will just expand. So all of this, I think, speaks to the kinds of things we want to do at DSU. We have been very busy advocating for advanced telecommunications capability. We have been working with Mike to advocate for 5G in Madison, South Dakota, and people might say, why Madison? And we're saying, because we want it, and we have a community that can test it out and play with it and see what works and what doesn't work. And we're in discussions with Sioux Falls about what we could do together to connect our experiences and actually do more work in that area. So with that, I'll say thank you very much, and we have time for a question or two. Okay, thank you.
On the national level, and gaining recognition for DSU and your offerings and what you can do, do your students, how do they participate in? Now, I'm not a net techie, so I don't know the right, but they have events across the nation where they actually compete
Yes.
with other schools, and how do we do with that? How do they do with that, and how does that give you some recognition around the country?
Good question. So we have a number of different kinds of competitions, Capture the Flag and other competitions. We do field students for those competitions. I think it's safe to say we sort of smash the competition regionally, and nationally we usually place. We play usually in the top 3 or 4 nationally. We've sent students for international competition, and they've also placed. So our students do very, very well. Just as an aside, and it's not unrelated, because our students are doing these competitions, we've just moved into the area of esports, which may seem, oh, that's just recreational kids playing games, but it's more than that. They're developing the skills they're going to need to run remote systems, manning the control systems for those balloons and aerostats and so on, come from people's interaction. And so we've just started our first esports competition, and our first match, if you like, whatever they call it, our first game match is against Northeastern in Boston. So that's an interesting school because they are the only other university in the country that has the same designations we do. There are only 2 schools that have the 4 designations, and they're one of them. So I'm just hoping that we beat them. We'll see what happens. Okay, thank you very much.